The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, I'm Peter Deakin from Eavis's UK Innovation Division, and I'd like to welcome you all to the second in our series of innovation webcasts. This one is Maximise Your ERP Potential and is going to focus on technology innovation within the ERP and supply chain arena, and how Eavis's innovative solutions enable our clients to drive both process efficiencies and business benefits, thus accelerating their digital transformation programs. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping and who we are and what we do. So firstly, just to go through the agenda, we're going to go through the future of ERP technology. We're going to then go into various bits of process automation around robotics and chatbots, and discuss how this is affecting our customers within the ERP space. We are going to be recording the session, and we'll be sending out links to both the recording and to the slide deck at the end. So that's generally the default question we get asked, so I just want to clarify that from the outset. Next, I want to just spend just a very short period of time explaining who Eavis are and what we do. We're an Oracle Platinum partner focused within the Oracle application space. So we're experts in Oracle Fusion, ERP, HCM, SCM, etc. And also within the Oracle Apps Unlimited space, Oracle eBusiness Suite. We've got approximately 1,200 customers around the world, and just short of 1,000 of those are cloud customers. We've delivered solutions to 30 customers within 30 different countries, and we have office locations in 19 of them. We have 1,200 qualified consultants, and we deliver solutions within 7 Oracle Cloud pillars, as I say, HCM, ERP, supply chain, CX, etc., etc. And we also deliver against multiple industry verticals such as hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing, heavy industry, local government. We pride ourselves on our qualifications, and I think the one thing I'd point out is within the last 12 months, we were Oracle's Global Partner of the Year for customer advocacy, and that really does stand testament to what our customers think of us and the services we deliver. I'm now going to hand over to Maria Tennant, who's our Customer Success Manager, and she's going to run through the majority of today's presentation, and there'll be a time for questions and answers at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Maria.
Thanks, Pete. Okay, so my name's Maria Tennant. I work at Eavis, and I've been working with Oracle products for many years, starting at Oracle. And I first worked with Oracle applications in the days of /Navigate, if those of you out there remember those days. Focused mainly on delivery of the technologies to large-scale, multi-country global rollouts under a number of business sectors. But I started my career as in industry as a SEMA accountant for many years. And in the days as a trainee accountant, the closest I ever got to a computer was taking the journal voucher down to the data entry team. And so we've come a long way to the present day, where I'm now showing you some of the new technologies that will change the way that we work and our businesses operate. Okay, so what's this webinar about? So this webinar is for you if you perhaps have a finance department with a heavy admin load. So take, for example, an AP clerk who's processing volumes of invoices, loading files, handling queries, and they're trying to balance the day-to-day job with also value-added activities such as talking to the suppliers and answering queries. Or, for example, if you're in first line of support dealing with user requests, such as password changes, which is typically me, or setting up new users. You might also want to be in this webinar to see how you can engage and inspire employees from the moment they are on board. So we might want to provide employees with a positive initial experience with the company, carrying on through the career. The first impressions and good experiences we give can make a huge difference about how the employee feels about the organisation, and they want to feel good about the organisation that they're in. You might also want to enjoy this webinar if it's you want to focus your finance team on value-added activities. So you want your people to drive change in the organisation, streamline processes, and improve your supplier and customer relationships. Or you might be interested in this webinar if you want your frontline managers to have to make their roles easier to manage and work with the processes that exist within the company. And we'll see some examples of the technologies that can maybe help in this particular capacity as we go through. Okay, so a little bit about what Eavis offers. So Pete's gone into quite a bit of detail about who we are, but we don't just implement applications. We also are involved in infrastructure projects, and a big area is business analytics and data warehouse, where we help companies, many who have already have an ERP system, and they want to gain maximum benefit from their investment by obtaining good, valuable information from the system to help drive the business. And so we help build their analytics and data warehouse capabilities. We're also involved in the Internet of Things. So a couple of examples of exactly what that is. For example, asset tracking. If you want to know exactly where your assets are and what they're doing, without anyone having to record any of this in the system, Internet of Things will do that for you. And that's also true of people resources. So with your connected workers, you can also track where they are and ensure that they're safe in the places that they're going. So there's a couple of examples of what Internet of Things actually is. And today we're going to focus on this artificial intelligence. What is it exactly? All these terms that have cropped up, these new acronyms and technologies, going to benefit us in the organisation. And today we're going to look at two of these. The first one is intelligent bots, also known as chatbots, which we'll be referring to later, and also digital assistants. They're all the same thing. And the second one is robotic process automation. And so we'll pull into this presentation some ideas of how these technologies can help the businesses in your finance departments, for example. And we'll be exploring what they will do. Okay, so what I thought I'd do first is look at what the status quo is now. What are today's jobs that the administrators will do? And a typical job that's advertised on Google, for example, they're around at the moment. There's a couple here. I've got an AP clerk and an AR clerk as examples. If we take the AP clerk, you'll see this person's going to be managing supplier accounts. So there's some key points from that. There's a process there. It's perhaps very repetitive. They will be responsible for processing high volume invoices. So there's a high volume aspect to this as well on a timely basis. So therefore, it's given us the impression here that there's a lot that needs to be done in a short time frame in this particular role. They also have to be good at maintaining accurate ledgers. So again, a bit of a contradiction here. They've got a lot high volume to process. They've got to be accurate. They've got to do it in a timely manner. Those pressures that are coming just in that part of the role. And at the same time, they have to be able to deal as first point of contact with telephone, email, or in person, and be professional. So in this particular role, this demands of the volume of workload that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and also having to deal with suppliers. And that can be quite stressful for a person in that role. They could have a lot to do on a particular day, but a major problem comes up that they have to deal with. And how can they be professional when they know they've got this backlog of work that they've got to manage? So similarly, if we look at AR clerk, so again, the same key things come up here. There's a high volume part to the role, so they've got to allocate funds to customer accounts. They have to do it in a timely manner and have to be accurate in the reconciliation and the deadlines that they have at month end. And they also have to be the first point of contact. And in all of these roles, they may have multiple systems as well that they're having to do these jobs in. So these are kind of the two typical jobs that we would have going on at the moment in finance. So what can the technologies that exist that we're going to look at help? In this particular survey by Forrester, it's telling us actually 85% of customer interactions only within the next 5 years will be done via robot. And that interaction could be either within the organization or external to our customers and suppliers. And that's a huge volume of interaction that's going to be done via robots. So it's clearly a big thing, a big technology that we should be interested in that's going on out there. And 87% of CEOs are looking to expand the AR workforce using AI bots. 87%, again, is huge volume. This technology needs to be taken seriously. What is it about this technology that makes the CEOs want to actually invest in it? And probably the answer is, in order to be competitive, everybody's doing it, they have to do the same. If the organization's growing and they have to take on resources to deal with the volume of work, they can either recruit more people to do it, or they can expand in these technologies that can expand and scale up and up and up quite rapidly and quite quickly as well. And that will help them be competitive and be able to respond quickly to market changes. So what's the potential for change? This research from McKinsey provides areas where new technologies will give us potential for using robots. So we have in here some strategic type of operations and some which are more sort of back office type. And if we look at on the left hand side at the type of operation, you'll see functions such as general accounting operations. So again, if we take the example that we used in the job role of the APAR clerk, those jobs, 35% of what those people are doing could actually be done by robots. And a very, very small proportion, 4%, which is the dealing with queries at the moment, can't be done through robots. You've got a capacity here in the middle that we don't have the technologies yet, but kind of we will go there in the future. So that's a third of the role in with current technologies could be replaced by robots. Whereas if we look at some of the more strategic roles, risk management, external relations, business development, there's less capability in those areas to use these technologies. And it doesn't look like, if we look on the right-hand side there, those kind of roles will be supported by robots in the future. So in finance as a whole, that's a whopping 27% with current technologies that could be replaced by robots. And just think what you could do with that extra time that you have available to you, the value-added work that could be done by those people and those in the organization. And just another thought, Microsoft, through their Work-Life Challenge in Japan, prototyped a 4-day week, and they found that the productivity went up by 40% by giving people a 4-day week. So just another thought is, as well as reducing the requirements for people, you could actually give them the day off, and you'll find that your productivity would go up at the same time as well. So there's another possibility that you might get from this, and shorter weeks obviously make for a happier workforce as well. So what exactly is RPA? So this is the first one that we're going to look at. So in layman's terms, because these things are quite mind-boggling to the typical business user, and an old person like me has been around a long time, it's about replacing the repetitive tasks, the manual tasks, the tedious tasks. And this technology actually mimics what a person will do, the end-to-end steps that a person will do in the job. So RPA is described as it's how businesses can reduce the manual steps that make up the time-consuming processes, such as we said, invoice processing, account reconciliation, setting up customers. And it will look at the end-to-end. It will take the role that person does and complete the full end-to-end. And they could be different systems. It could be taking a file off a desktop, loading it onto a SharePoint drive, uploading it into a system, and then onward processing. All those steps that a human being would do can be replaced by a robot without any manual intervention. So this slide here has some information telling us a little bit about some of these new technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, again, quite mind-boggling in terms of what they are. And I like to think of AI and RPA as being the brains and the brawn of the technologies. The artificial intelligence, being the brains, is the thinking part. So it looks at data, trends, and patterns, and from those it helps to drive improvements in the processes. Whereas RPA is the doing side of the activity, so it mimics the human actions that a person would do. So to give you an example of those two things in practice, if we take again our AP clerk that's trying to enter an invoice into accounts payable, one of the pieces of information that person will need on the invoice is the invoice number. And the first time that person sees the invoice, they'll have to scan the document because everybody's template's different to find the invoice number. And so that'll take a little bit of time to do that before they can key that invoice into the system. Obviously, the next time that invoice comes into their possession, they know, because they remember where that invoice number is, and they can then key it into the system. However, if that person goes off sick and there's a temp that comes in to replace that person for the day, that person has to go through their whole learning again and has the same invoice, and they have to go and search for the invoice number. So you can see how the process is slower, when you've got humans involved. RPA, if we take an invoice scanning solution, for instance, will take the invoice that is provided to it, and it will search where the invoice number is, and next time that invoice comes in, it will remember it, and it will always remember it because it's learned that. And that technology will not make mistakes like a human being. It will not go off sick like a human being. So that's the AI part. It's taking some information and learning. So it's learned where the invoice number is. The processing part of the AP, the invoice processing, is then entering the whole invoice into the system, putting the account distributions in, doing the invoice approvals and validation, and then further on to payment. So that is where RPA, which is the doing side, technologies can be used. So we know there are areas that can be replaced by technologies, but it's not going to completely replace what a human being can do. And I think that's an important thing to remember as well. Okay, so what RPA will do, it'll take an event in the system, for example, when the file arrives, the invoice file, and then from that, it will trigger the RPA process. So there are various tools available in the market to implement RPA. And in Eavis, we use a tool which is called UiPath. And it's a good tool, it's quick to deploy, and you can quickly start to get returns with using that tool. And it can be used on top of Oracle applications. And what we recommend in deploying the tool is start small, find something little that you might gain benefit from, and try that out first with the RPA tool. Okay, so we've just learned in the previous example that the errors that a person, or that the human being can make errors, and the manual work, it's been found, costs companies between 20 to 30% in lost revenue due to these inefficiencies. You know, the large percentage of document processing mistakes that are user-generated errors. So a person keys in the invoice, they transpose the invoice number, or they pick the wrong supplier. Those problems, when entered, manifest themselves. So the further that problem goes through the system, the harder it is to do the rework. So as you can see, that's quite costly in terms of the business, impact on the business in terms of profitability. And finally, because people are so focused on the doing, ploughing these invoices into the system, working on the day-to-day job of putting the transactions in the system, they're very much in their silos. They can't lift their heads up above the sand too often and work with other departments. And very much in an AP or AR department where you have problems, you have to work with other teams. You've got to work with sales or order management, dispatch, to try to understand if there's a debt collection problem, why that's occurred, because somebody's not going to pay the bill. And it's those value-added activities that really these people should be focusing on, not the repetitive tasks of actually ploughing in information into the system. So where are the opportunities for RPA? So we've looked at one, we've spoken about invoice processing quite a bit, but there are lots and lots of other areas in the finance arena. Customer order processing, similarly, you can take an order, enter it into the system, have it dispatched automatically through RPA. Call center operations, really, really good one. A call center operative often has to have information about the customer from lots and lots of different sources. And the collation of all that information available to the call center operator is a really important role that RPA can fulfill, so that the call center operator then has all the information it needs about that customer. So when they get into the conversation with the person, they're not exposed, and they can give the right information and give a much, much better customer service. Other quite good areas, which you would not kind of imagine, are things like data migration, the automation of loading data into the system, bank statement reconciliations. RPA is really good with that because it's about comparing two lists of values and looking for differences. Perfect area for RPA. And then finally, an area such as the help desk, where, you know, back again, responding to those repetitive requests, the password resets, for example, setting up system, people on the system, on perhaps a number of systems that they have to set up. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate an area that could be used for RPA, and this is around receivables installments. So in this scenario, we have a credit controller who's agreed with the user, a customer, that they can change their installment terms because they can't pay the invoice. And so they'll set this information up, make it available to RPA, and then all the background work that needs to be done to set that up in the system will be done. So if you just bear with me a minute, I shall launch the demo. Okay, so the first thing we're seeing here is a spreadsheet where the users captured the information, and based on that spreadsheet, the robot will simply just go in and log into the system using my name, password, and you can see the navigation it's got to do to actually get to the place that it needs to be to make the changes. It's got to go to navigate to the page, find the right transaction, go down into the actual transaction details and change the installments. So as an AR clerk, collector, whilst this is all going on, I can be on the phone dealing with other inquiries and just leave the system to do this. So when it's going, it's changing the installment due dates. And in this example, for some reason, it's all the same due date, but we won't question why that's the case. So if you can just imagine the time it's going to take to process these transactions on an individual basis. So that's saved. And once that's done, that information is then sent back to the spreadsheet that we had earlier, which we'll see in a second. And it tells us that those transactions that were successful and those failed for whatever reason. And so the collector now only has to deal with the failures, and they're assured that and why, we don't know, maybe the invoice is closed or there's something that's changed about that transaction. So they only happen to deal with the exceptions in this case. Okay. Okay, back to our PowerPoint, and the next technology that I'm going to talk about is chatbots, so otherwise known as digital assistants or intelligent bots. So what are chatbots? Okay, so there are two types of bots really. There's the simple bots, so they provide quick answers to common questions. So an example of that could be facts that you have, which will always be the same. So for example, you want to return an item, what's the returns policy? So there could be a static response to that particular question. So that's an example of a simple bot. And intelligent bots have more complex rules behind them, and they can go and do some very complicated things and look into the system and obtain more useful information. For example, if you want to find a quantity of stock on hand or something of that nature. So the value of these bots is increasing all the time. So they can deal with small queries, with suppliers, etc., etc. And when those queries become more difficult, they can then be routed through to the department who's able to give the value added and answer the more complex queries. So in fact, what these bots are doing are taking away some of the drudge and the small repetitive queries and problems that perhaps crop up on a day-to-day basis. The other thing it's doing is people who are involved in the organization these bots can make them feel that they're actually involved with the organization and they're dealing with the organization, and they won't have to sit on the phone for 15 minutes waiting for somebody to come and answer their response, because these bots can be really responsive and really quick. Okay, so what are the values of chatbots? So as we said, they can respond almost immediately. So you have a question and the response comes back quickly and you don't have to wait a long time. So in that regard, they're giving better customer service to people both within the organisation and external to the organisation. They're also good in terms of knowledge. So if you've got a new employee, for example, they can ask questions. Again, if we look at the facts, for instance, there may be typical questions that people want to know about the travel policy, for instance, about terms and conditions, about maybe their holiday, and those bots can actually help with transfer of knowledge within the organisation. And another big factor is the comfort. That new people, or the millennials, are more comfortable these days with text. And research has shown actually that the millennials expect to have an immediate answer 24 hours a day. Their mindsets are quite different to people of my generation, where we kind of expected a lag in response times when we did anything, because we were dealing with old technologies. The younger generation, and therefore the future of businesses, is all about immediacy. They want quick, fast responses, accurate, 24/7, and that's actually what's really, really good and really important about these bots. So how did chatbots evolve? So apparently the first bot was called Eliza, and it was made in 1966, so quite a long time ago, but they've only really come into the mainstay really the last few years. And they're ever evolving, as we see with these technologies. As a technology takes off, it becomes the norm, and it's the latest to emerge as the sort of virtual assistant all over the place, really. So the more involved the bot is, as we were saying, it can be more deal with more complex queries, and that is increasingly becoming the norm now. And as we say, employees are going to expect this as part of how they deal with each other and how they interact with companies and businesses. Employees are spending youngsters are spending all their time on their phones, and this is just an extension of that, really. So what happens to the employees in all of this? So if you think about technologies can only replace a little bit of what a human being does. There are lots of technologies that can be very, very useful to us in our day-to-day lives and within the business environment, but it's never actually going to replace a person. So you see that the technologies will be used within a role, but not actually completely replace a role. So thinking about the APAR roles that we were looking at earlier, and the processing of high volume, repetitive tasks done in a timely manner and accurately, all that type of part of the job can be replaced by the technologies, and that would leave the employee to concentrate on more value-added activities, such as, again, in the case of the APAR clerks, building good relationships with the customers and the suppliers, and dealing with those complex queries that cannot be dealt with through the technologies, that they might not need to deal with and speak to other departments in order to resolve. And so they'll be able to get their head out the sand from their day-to-day job and actually spend their time on delivering a quality service to the people both within the organisation and their customers and suppliers. Okay, so chatbots exist in all sorts of guises. So as we're saying, there are lots of tools for doing this. At home, we have tools such as Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant. I have Google at home, and my kids tell me it's the only friend I've got because I constantly ask it to tell me jokes. So it's got some uses and puts the radio on and that type of thing for me. We also have Messenger, which is you can also interact with Messenger. And within the work environment, you have tools such as Slack and Hangouts, which can be used with Chatbots. Oracle Cloud itself has embedded Chatbots and digital assistants, and they're available out of the box, or if you want something that's different and unique to your own business, Eavis can do that for you too. We've developed a huge amount of chatbots and digital assistants for lots of companies, and so that's something that we can offer to you as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you some examples of chatbots. So we've got two here, and the first one is a purchase order query. And what that is going to do, you might have think of the scenario, you've got a member of the purchasing team who's perhaps out with a supplier on site, and they're having a debate with the supplier about whether an invoice is being paid. And typically they would have to probably take that query away and deal with it when they get back to base, or try to call up the AP team whilst they're in their meeting and try to get a response to that query. So I'll just show you how that chatbot will work in this example. So what we have here, so this is Google Assist, and this, so you can use chatbots. You can either speak to the chatbot or you can actually type in. And so it's asking me very politely, greetings, how can I assist? So we tell it we want to talk to the planning buddy. Okay, now I'm going to stop there. And so what you have here at the bottom are some canned sort of questions, really. So that can be built into the chatbot, so you don't have to type every time, you just have to click on the standard maybe questions you might need to ask. So how can I help you? So we want some purchase details, please. Invoice number, yes, we have that. Let's type it in. Supplier name, yes, I'm with the supplier now. And then we have the response there. So that's a purchase order. It's complete, and there's the buyer. So the PO's kind of being dealt with. So these chatbots, as you can see, very, very easy to use. Don't need to navigate around the system. And as an infrequent user of the system, great to have that capability. So the second example is supplier invoice status, so I'll just play that one for you. Okay, so supplier buddy, so what are we going to do here? How can I help you? So again, we have the buttons on the bottom, which allow you just to easily select the query that you're interested in. Redwood Shores. I'm in America today. Okay, so this invoice isn't paid. Now, I've got some information here which can be extended. So if you want to know when the invoice needs to be paid, you could include that as well. So now I want to know about cancelled invoices. So I'll ask a second question here. Which invoices are cancelled? And so there are some cancelled invoices that's displayed. So you can incorporate for those, perhaps those salespeople or the purchasing guys out on site talking to suppliers, any standard type of questions that they would normally have from their customers or suppliers could be incorporated onto the chatbot so that they can get commonly answered questions resolved quite quickly. Oh, gosh, again. Okay, so looking at the jobs that we start with the finance administrator roles that we looked at earlier, and considering what would those jobs look like with the technologies that we've just been discussing. And if we take the key concepts that I spoke about earlier, jobs that have a repetitive element to them, where there's high volume, maybe the things have to be done in a timely manner and accurately, there are a number of the activities of both the AP clerk and AR clerk that would kind of go away. So if we take this first job, actually the only part that would be left is the contact with the suppliers by telephone, email, or person. And so the job might change to give them more time to actually work on developing relationships with the business and the suppliers. And in terms of the AR clerk, that role kind of goes away completely. So what would the job look like in that capacity? So they would be involved with handling exceptional queries that come through from the digital assistant, building relationships with customers, liaising with past due customers to see why they haven't paid, and being more proactive in terms of trying to come up with payment plans with those customers, creating strategies and processes to make the department more efficient in the future, and analysing AR information so they can focus their time not on the repetitive drudgery of processing transactions, but on the value-added activities that actually will make the business better in terms of customer service with the people and that you're dealing with. Okay, so what are the next steps? Okay, well, we'd love you to come and meet with us if you liked some of the technologies that are there, and if you think that they would be of interest to you. And I'd encourage you to go away and look in your organisation and see where there are opportunities where you could maybe introduce, just in a small way, some of these technologies, try it out, see whether it works, see whether you're getting a good return on your investment from doing that, and then you can expand. You don't need to go full big bang on these technologies. And if you see that it is adding value, then you can start to maybe roll out more of the technologies through the organisation. Okay, so passing over to Pete really now for any questions that we might have coming in.
Thanks, Maria. That was very informative. I've got with me as well Davil Akara from our Innovations division. He heads up our analytics and artificial intelligence practice. So he's the brains of the operation, and I'm going to be posing any questions that have been raised to him. So the first question that's been asked, Davil, is mentioned on the slide deck that chatbots would integrate with Google Hangouts and Slack. A lot of people are using either Microsoft Skype for Business or Microsoft Teams. Will it integrate with the Microsoft product set?
Yes, so the chatbots that we described today have the capabilities to connect to a lot of digital channels. So we have worked with integrating chatbots with Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp for Business, or you know, for that matter, Google Assistant as well. So now with Oracle coming in with the voice support as well, so it also supports voice-based interactions on your custom mobile applications as well now.
Okay, second question, thank you for that. Second question is the chatbot interaction in the demonstration was a relatively basic interaction. Will it work with more complicated data sets in terms of maybe updating the system, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so for the purpose of the webinar, we used a simpler case, but we have done cases where the chatbot is able to interact with the user and capture the right set of parameters and produce a analytical report, as well as the bot has a capability to have a pop-up form where they can fill in the information to complete the transaction. So the form will have all the compulsory fields that are required to complete the transaction, capture those, and once the user clicks on submit, the flow will be transferred back to the bot, and it will submit the transaction on the underlying system.
Thank you. And the final question I have is around robotics process automation. Again, the example that was shown was an Oracle Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
How does the RPA tool interact with maybe Oracle e-Business Suite, or 2 or 3 different systems need to interact together in order to complete a single transaction?
So RPA has the capabilities to interact between multiple systems. So we have worked with legacy systems, or those VB-based desktop applications as well. So it can interact with a desktop application, pick up data from the desktop application, push the data to your Oracle e-Business Suite or JD Edwards, or it may be SAP or any other ERP system that you might have. RPA can also read data from emails, download attachments, do a reconciliation process of the bank accounts, credit card statements to complete the MIS at the end of the month. So there's a lot of capabilities to spread the technology across different visualization, different tools that the organization is using.
Okay, I've just had one further question come in, so we'll do this one and then we'll call the webcast to a conclusion. The question is, we've already got a chatbot solution within our organization. How easy is it to integrate the Oracle chatbot into that so that we can leverage our ERP information?
So the Oracle digital assistants can directly interact with the existing flow or the conversation that's been built. It can be integrated using various touch points, like it can do the REST APIs or use the same kind of integrations with the bot. The bot will also support the REST APIs, and the 2 different bots can interact using the REST APIs as well. Okay,
so that's it. I'd like to thank you all for joining this webcast today. I'd also like to thank Marie and Darvel for their content and their help. Just to remind everybody that we will be emailing out both a recording YouTube link of the presentation and a copy of the slides. And if you have any further questions, then you have my contact details on this final slide, and please reach out. Thank you very much for attending. Goodbye.